Hello crafty friends, it's Alicia here with a project for Tailored Expressions. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can get a jump start on your holiday cards with a new Oh Christmas Tree card making kit. From the kit, I will be using the Oh Christmas Tree Split Stamp and Stencil combo with the coordinating die and the Mini Strips Holiday 2 Sentiment Stamp Set. Some supporting products I'll be using are the Checking In background stamps and Mini Strips die. For cardstocks, I'll be using Mulled Wine, Pink Champagne, Jalapeño, Sugar Cube, and Gold Foil. For stamping and ink blending, I got out Mulled Wine, Pink Champagne, Jalapeño, Peapod, Cinnamon, and VersaMark. I did not end up using the Pink Champagne. I will also be using my green blender brush, and I'm going to do some heat embossing, so I got out the TE Anti-Static Powder Tool and Detail Gold Embossing Powder. To help me get nice crisp impressions, I will also be using the exclusive Teal Misty and the Just Press tool. And to help me hold everything together, I got out a variety of adhesives. Let's get crafty! I'm going to get started by making some pattern cardstock that will be used for the gifts that go under the Christmas trees. For this, I'm using the Checking In background stamp, a couple scraps of Pink Champagne and Mulled Wine cardstock, and I'll be stamping with Sugar Cube ink. I'm going to set up my cardstock in a specific square on my Misty and then place that background stamp flat down on top of it. Now I'll know when I go to place the Mulled Wine cardstock exactly where it should go on the background. For this, I'm going to ink up and stamp twice on each of those cardstocks using the Just Press tool to help me get a nice crisp impression. Now the reason I'm starting with this is I need to set these off to the side so that white ink dries completely before I need to die cut it. Now I'm going to bring in the Oh Christmas Tree Split Stamp Set, and I have 4 pieces of Sugar Cube cardstock, so today I'll show you how to easily mass produce a design. For this first layer, I'm going to stamp the snowflakes on the outside and heat emboss those with Detail Gold embossing powder. I will be setting up each of my pieces of Sugar Cube the same place I did with the previous 2 cardstocks, just to keep everything nice and consistent. Now for this first round of stamping, I will just be using the frame around the edge of the tree. So I'm going to place that flat down on top of the piece of Sugar Cube, and I did lift it up a little bit to try to get everything straight across and centered. For now, I'll just set that tree stamp to the side, and then I'm going to prep my Sugar Cube cardstock well with the anti-static powder tool. That way, when I ink up the stamp with the VersaMark and stamp it onto my cardstock, when I go to pour the embossing powder onto it, the powder will only stick to where I want to. Now, if you do happen to notice you have some stray embossing powder, just get a small dry brush and wipe that away. After I carefully set that first piece to the side, I continued the same process for the remaining 3 pieces of Sugar Cube cardstock. With the Misty, mass producing cards is super easy. Let me know in that comment section below if you have a Misty and if you love to use it to mass produce as well. Once my 4 pieces were stamped and powdered, I did leave the outline portion of the cling stamp right on the Misty. Then I brought in my heat tool. I did let it heat up for about 30 seconds before I brought it to the cardstock to quickly melt the powder. And here is a look at all of that shine. This is always my favorite step in card making. Once the powder was melted on all of those, I brought back in the Misty and the stamp, and now what I'm going to do is place the tree back into the frame before I remove the outside edges. This way I know that tree is exactly where I need it to be to continue stamping. I placed my first snowflake piece back in the Misty using the same square on the grid as before, and I made sure to pay attention where the tree trunk gets stamped and put that at the bottom because it does look a little similar. Once that was in place, I used the cinnamon ink pad to ink up the stamp, and then I used the Just Press tool to get a nice solid trunk and branches. Now once that's finished, all I have to do is remove it from the MISTI and then replace it with one of the other snowflake pieces. I repeated this process until all 4 trees were stamped. Once those were ready, I brought in the coordinating stencils and the Peapod and Jalapeño ink pads. I will be using these colors for the tree branches. For my ink blending, I brought in a grid paper placemat, and I'm going to use the pre-printed squares and rectangles to start getting everything aligned. Once I had that first stencil in place, I used a couple pieces of removable labeling tape to hold it down, and then I started with the lighter of the green inks, the Peapod, and I used circular motions to fill in the open areas. After I had that filled in, I replaced it with the next piece. I don't want to move on to the darker ink yet because I still need to put this lighter green on my 4 stamped pieces. You'll notice there that when I went to replace it, I did just peel up the bottom piece of removable labeling tape and use it as a hinge so it would lay back down exactly where I needed it. Once I had the lighter green on all 4 pieces, I brought in the second stencil and the Jalapeño ink pad. Now for this, I did start with the same square to align, but what's nice about the Tailored Expression stencils is there is some etching on there where the tree trunk and branches are to help you get it lined up. Once that was in place, I put those same pieces of tape back down and then started ink blending all 4 pieces with the Jalapeño ink. For this one, I did spend a little more time blending to make sure there was a nice contrast between the Peapod and the Jalapeño. I kept this up until all 4 pieces were ink blended. For this third stencil, which kind of puts the ornaments or the baubles on the tree, I'm going to do something a little bit different than ink blending. I'm going to be using VersaMark ink, and I'm going to gold emboss those pieces. So what you'll need to do is, first of all, prep that cardstock with your anti-static powder tool, and now using a finger dauber, I am going to be pressing VersaMark ink into each of those openings. This is going to be a step where you'll want to take your time. I did go over each of the openings a few times because you want to make sure it's nice and saturated so when you pour on the powder, it sticks to each of those baubles. After I added the VersaMark and embossing powder to each of those pieces, I brought back in my heat tool to set the powder. Now, if you don't want to heat emboss the baubles like I did, you could always ink blend those. You could use TE foil and glitter grab and add some foil to them, or it might be fun to add some gems in those places. Using the coordinating Oh Christmas Tree die set, I'm going to cut out the trees that I just stamped and stenciled, and I'm going to use the presents on that pattern cardstock I made. For the bows, I added some adhesive to the back of a piece of TE gold foil cardstock, and when I die cut that, I ended up getting 4 sets of the presents, 4 sets of the bows, and then I also die cut 4 pink stars from that pink gingham cardstock. I got all of the bows added to the packages, and having that adhesive on the back made it so handy. And once all of those were in place, which I finished most of those off camera, I made 4 top fold Jalapeño card bases. To assemble the cards, I'm going to start by adding some liquid glue to the back of the snowflake frame piece. That way when I go to add this to the front center of the card base, I have some wiggle time to get everything nice and centered. Now off camera when I was making those card bases, I also added foam tape to the back of the trees and each of the gifts. So what I'm going to do once that release paper is pulled, I'm going to place the tree onto the card front, but you'll notice that I offset it just a little bit so that you kind of have a border or a shadow behind the tree. When that was in place, I used a dot of liquid glue and I added a pink star to the top of the tree. Then it was time to add the presents underneath the tree just like it's Christmas morning. For these I kind of made them wonky and offset them, and on the largest package I just had foam tape on the left half, and then where it overhung the tree trunk and the other present I added a little liquid glue. I finished assembling the rest of the Christmas trees off camera, and then it was time for some sentiments. For those, I will be using the Mini Strips Holiday 2 stamp set and Mulled Wine ink onto a scrap of sugar cube cardstock. Once I had that set up, I got it inked up, and then to get a nice crisp impression, I once again used the Just Press tool. Now the great thing about this is I can now take it off camera with that coordinating die, and I end up with multiple sentiments. Also, while I was off camera die cutting that, I cut a piece from Mulled Wine cardstock as well. Now I'm going to have, kind of just like with the Christmas tree, a little border or shadow on each piece. All I need to do is add a little liquid glue to the front and then offset the coordinating sentiment to the top left of that. For the first card, I chose a two-part sentiment, Merry Christmas from our family to yours, and got it added to the tree with some liquid glue. Now you could add one sentiment, you could add 3 sentiments, that is totally up to you, but because you now have multiples, it makes that easier. I finished adding sentiments to the front of the cards off camera, and then to finish off the inside and to make the personal messages easier to read, I added a piece of white cardstock, and at the bottom I added a little extra decoration by using some of that stamped Mulled Wine cardstock that I used for the gifts. And now here are some close-up looks at the finished cards. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. If you enjoyed the process, a thumbs up is appreciated. And if you're not already a subscriber, we do hope you'll click on the button below so you're the first to know about our latest videos. To find out more about the products I used today, you can check out the links in the description box below or visit the Tailored Expressions online store at tailoredexpressions.com.